Welcome to Entangled Observations. This is a brand new channel, and if you'd like to help me out, could you please leave a like and subscribe and maybe a comment? Let me know what you think of what I'm saying. So this topic is going to be a little bit difficult and it's a little bit brutal, but I've come to a realization over the last little while. There's something going on. I've been watching a lot of videos about people losing their jobs.
232,000 unemployment claims, new unemployment claims in October 2025.
1.2 million? 1.2 million. Job market is so cooked, bro. I just read that there's 1.2 million candidates applying to 17,000 available entry-level jobs.
25 years. I worked for the company for 25 years, and they let me go at the age of 60.
I've been watching a lot of videos about people struggling and having trouble getting food, paying their rent, their car payments. I look at the price of cars. It's absolutely insane.
I'm Canadian. I live in Ontario. I have a good job. I work full-time. My husband works full-time. Even with the money that we make, it's absolutely flabbergasting the cost of living right now. You literally cannot leave your house without spending $200-$300. You go to the grocery store, getting anything basic is so much money. You just want to feed your kids healthy. It's so much money.
So I'll be living with my parents until I'm well on a good salary. Like I'll be probably living with them for the next 6 years or so, I'd say, with the way things are going.
I'm going to show you the craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. You ready? This is our electric bill for 1 month.
The prices don't seem to be going down anytime soon. The prices of rent, the price of houses, everything seems to just be escalating out of control. And then I heard some statistics. So I thought I would go over some of them. So take a look at this. From January 10th, 2024, and I'm going back a little bit because I just want to show that this is a trend that's been happening for a while. This is from Business Insider. The wealthiest 10% of Americans own 93% of stocks, even with market participation at a record high. This is by Jennifer Soar. So January 10th, 2024. Let's see. The richest Americans own the vast majority of the U.S. stock market, according to Fed data. The top 10% of Americans held 93% of all stocks, the highest level ever recorded. Meanwhile, the bottom 50% of Americans held just 1% of all stocks in the third quarter of 2023. The wealthiest Americans have never owned so much of the stock market, with the top 10% now holding a record 93% of U.S. equities, according to the Federal Reserve data. Americans broadly have been participating in the stock market at a higher rate, with a record 58% of households owning stock in 2023, according to the Fed survey of consumer finance. And now with all the layoffs that we see happening, I imagine that's going to be dropping. I imagine this also will apply in Canada. I imagine this also applies in England. But anyway, this is what I'm talking about. In the third quarter, the bottom 50% households held $4.8 trillion of real estate assets, but just $0.3 trillion worth in stocks, Fed data shows. And now we can see this is being eroded pretty rapidly by equity firms like BlackRock, who are just buying up property like mad. And then the property, because of inflation and dollar devaluation everywhere in the West, prices are just going up, especially on real estate. Real estate seems to be very sensitive to inflation, especially in Canada, I think, but it's starting to really hit the US too. And so that means owning a house is becoming absolutely impossible unless you're in the top 10%. So this percentage, the bottom 50% of households holding 4.8 trillion, that's going to be collapsing. If it isn't collapsing already, it soon will be. The top 1%, by comparison, held 16 trillion in stocks and just over 6 trillion in real estate assets. So there you have it. And they're continuing to expand that. I'm going to look over here. The entire economy now depends on the AI industry, not fumbling. So we've shot a little bit into the future here. It turns out that almost half of GDP is depending on AI right now. That's absolutely insane. So as you can see, clearly, when we only make up 50% of GDP, and I'm certain it's expected to go down, I'm certain of that we just simply don't matter anymore. You don't matter. That's why you're struggling. That's why I'm struggling. That's why everybody's struggling unless you're in that top 10%. And you better hope you stay in the top 10%. These days, you don't have to be Rockefeller financier to know the U.S. economy is on shaky ground. Utility bills are going through the roof, imported goods are skyrocketing in cost, and job growth is non-existent. Of course, it doesn't bode too well for the Rockefeller fellas are trembling too. I don't think they are. I think some are that are out of the loop. I heard it estimated that there are about 3,000 people on the planet that actually understand the guts of what's happening right now, or actually participate it and take part. We're talking, not to get conspiratorial, but we're talking about the dark nobility and so forth, which do exist. As Sharman notes, the billions of dollars being dumped into AI now account for 40% of US GDP growth in 2025, with no signs of slowing down. Meanwhile, AI companies have accounted for 80% of growth in American stocks. That's absolutely insane. The other side, and I'll make another video about this, and I'm going to show it. What's happening right now, I think, is that we're being hosed. I think that this AI, it doesn't work. ChatGPT and Claude and all these things, they're impressive, sure, but they've got an error rate of 10%, even higher sometimes. And businesses aren't using that anymore, yet they're still pouring money in. And what are these investors hoping for? Well, I think what they're hoping for, I think what they know is coming down the pipeline, is that what they're investing in is a security grid. What they're investing in is CBDCs and digital ID. And you needn't think that digital ID is something you have to carry on your phone. Digital ID can be as simple as just having cameras everywhere with facial recognition. They don't actually need it on your phone. I think that that's what's being implemented here, and I think that that's the purpose of the AI. That's why they're investing in it, even though it actually doesn't work. It's got a 10% error rate. But the thing is AI works very well for surveillance, very well for running a prison. And that prison just happens to be our country's. Though consumption has historically made up the largest section of the total US economy, it's now dwarfed by AI investments. As the FT notes, what remains of consumption is likewise driven up by the top 10% of American earners, an already wealthy group compared to the rest of the world, who now account for a record-breaking 50% of all US consumer spending. So 50%. So as you can see, with the top 10% of consumers accounting for 50% of purchasing, your money is way better spent going after the top 10% than it is going after the bottom 90%. And because the top 10% is just going to keep growing and growing in value, and they're going to consume more and more, eventually our money's not going to matter at all. So you wonder, why did that restaurant shut down? It's because you don't matter. Not anymore. Top 10% account for nearly half of all consumer spending. There it is. Why are you losing your job? Why is life getting harder? Because you don't matter anymore. It is way easier to make things and to go after the top 10% than it is to go after the bottom 90%. And you're going to get more of a payoff if you go after the top 10%. The reality is you just don't matter. Your job doesn't matter. Whether you're working or not doesn't matter. Whether you're eating or not doesn't matter. Whether you're alive or not doesn't matter. The top 10% matter, and it's only growing. So as we lose our share of GDP, our importance diminishes. And what the government or the elite are willing to do for us also diminishes. So where does this all lead? Well, it leads to us not mattering anymore. Why are ads targeting affluent people? It's cheaper, and it makes more sense from an economic perspective to target the wealthy, the top 10%. There's no point in targeting poorer people. Now, there are still marketing companies out there, and there are still companies out there targeting poorer people. By poorer people, I mean not in the top 10%. So the 90% of people. As people get more and more in debt, and as the economy gets harder and harder and more sluggish, the 90% are going to lose their ability to purchase. And as they do that, they're going to lose relevance, and they're going to become less and less and less relevant. So you may be wondering, why does government seem to ignore the problems of poorer people? Why do they placate them with nice language, but don't actually do anything for them? Well, the reason is because they honestly don't matter. They don't matter to the economy at all. They don't matter to the donor class. All the 90% can donate as much money as they want, but it's the top 10%. Their donations are going to be much larger and they're going to be a lot more significant. The only way that people actually matter anymore, the bottom 90%, is that they can vote. If we lose the vote, we're going to completely lose relevance. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll leave a like and you'll remember to subscribe, and please leave a comment if you'd like. What do you think of what I'm saying? Thank you very much for watching.